Quick question. Have you ever thought about reality as we live it, or specifically as you live it, and how you experience life, and the fact that you're a human being living on Earth, as Vusi puts it, a little rock floating in space that we call Earth? Have you ever sat to consider how minute we are compared to the expanse of the universe and how large things are, how large life is? And have you ever really sat and seen, like really seen, look at people and see them and see the fact that they are actually fellow human beings like you trying to figure out life, and how they do it is differently from you? There is that aspect called sonda, whereby it's a realization. I think I've spoken about it before. It's a realization that other people are main characters in their own life with their own dreams, with their own ambitions, and they're living life differently from you. Do you get to critique the choices that you make? Do you get to choose the decisions and the actions for the day, or you just leave it every day as it comes? Do you try to break out of the repetitive cycle of life as it is? As Ecclesiastes puts it, that there is nothing new under the sun. Everything that we know it as of today, despite the fact that we have really gone so far as a race, as a species, in regards to the innovations and the inventions, and how far technology has reached up to this point, that we have advanced so much, and that any information you might want is you can get it instantly at the snap of a finger. But with all this, how do you get to experience reality? Do you get to choose it, or does it happen to you? Yeah. So without getting ahead of myself, hello there. Welcome back to another episode of Unspoken Reality Podcast. I hope you're still on the trajectory of making life, living life to the fullest, and becoming the best version of yourself, because you are doing this in regards to expanding our capacity. Because once we do that, when we have an expanded capacity, then it is only in that state when we can accommodate others, making sure that those who are underprivileged get to live or experience life in a better way, because there is no dignity in poverty. And we also want to expand our capacity so that we can just become, we can reach the zenith of our potential. We can become what we were meant to become, however and whatever that is, different as it is to every person. So in this episode, I want us to explore reality, some bit of it. Perhaps maybe this question is the statement itself, what is real, what is not, might be a cliche, or it could be something that you've never really sat down to think about it deeply. Like, by the way, what is real? And with the advent of technology and the way AI is moving, at least at this point, we can really point out that no, that one is an AI. But with a few years, I think there was there's this business. Let me just call him business guy. I don't remember his name. He said that in 48 months, we can't distinguish what is real in the internet. We can't really know what is real and what is not. I'm not sure where he got the data to be 48 months. It might be sooner, it might be later, but it's inevitable. There's going to be that point in time whereby AI is going to be so much advanced that you won't even know a deep fake. At least at this point in time, we can really tell this is a deep fake. You can know that no, there are some bit of distortions that you can see, but now they're reducing. Like when it started, you could see some distortion in regards to distortion of figures. You're seeing six fingers and whatnot, and it was easy to point out and like, oh, this is AI. But it's only a matter of time where you can't really separate what is real and what is not. Back in the old days, I'd presume if you were to draw a Venn diagram, the circles of what is real and what is not, they might be well separated, not conjoined. But as the internet started to advance and technology and whatnot, this circle almost uh, intersected, whereby the intersection is something that could be real and something that it could be not. You might say that conspiracy theories fall on this intersection. But now we are looking at a future whereby the whole circle of what is real and what is not is going to be messed up together, that you get even to question your own lived reality. It's like now life will be gaslighting us. Is what you're seeing real? Is it a metaverse and whatnot? And so I think this episode is a bit timely, just to provoke and to challenge you to think about how you experience life, and do you know really what is real, and do you get to live your life deliberately? Do you get to choose how you experience it? Because just to sum it all up, if I was to sum this episode in one word, would be experience. How you get to experience life, that dictates the reality that you live in, and now you can choose how you experience it. So all these questions about reality have been posed by philosophers great and old, the likes of Akina Plato, when they were talking about the nature of reality. Now we have augmented reality, we have virtual reality. And it begs the question, I'm not sure if we use that correctly, saying beg, but yeah, if you understand what I mean, that the question about our existence. What is the truth of existence? Why are we here? Why do we do the things that we do? Why is human nature as it is? And what controls our behaviors as human beings? Why do we get to do the things that we don't want to do? You get. So there can be that ideal reality and the actual reality whereby you live in. There is the way that we think how things are supposed to work, and then there is a way how things actually work. For instance, when we talk about politics, in simple terms, politics is simply distributing resources. Yeah, we have politicians because we have limited resources, and you're putting them in charge of the, be it human, be it the natural resources, that we want you to distribute these resources according to merit, according to fairness and equity, making sure that the deserving gets those resources as much as they're little, as much as they're little. We all know that. Take this from point A to point B, and it's the common expectation of politicians, but they don't do that. Why? What we expect is not what is happening. The ideal is not the actual. Yeah, so in the last episode, we were talking about elevating a perspective, coming from the quote of how we see reality and how we see life, not as it is, but as we are. And when we are talking about how we are, what we are, who we are, is really based and shaped on the experiences that we go through. And in turn, this experience shapes our perception of life, how we look at life. You can't see the same event as the next person. Remember, you are in a constant state of becoming. You can't even say who you actually are, because at this point in time, you are still becoming a certain somebody, a certain thing that is not what you were 10 seconds ago. You remember what we learned in biology, growth and development, how growth is different from development. And so, stemming all the way back down from ourselves, what is happening, the changes, the homeostasis, and the metabolism, all the way up to existential crisis, questioning your reality, questioning what you are, where you are, and whether you are where you are supposed to be. You realize that sometimes you might be saying something a certain way, and when you're talking with someone, you actually don't understand how is it that they're seeing it differently, because you think that this is just so obvious, but that reality is different to the next person. And so, from the definition that I got just online of what reality is, I can't really pinpoint for a fact that I know what reality is, or I assume to know what it is. Most of the things that we do say and do think and do know is basically a repetition of what has been and what other people talk about, presumably authoritarian figures in those fields, people that we can actually quote factually. And so here it's defined as the sum total of everything that exists. So you might question what actually exists. Is the thing that I'm seeing real? But reality is the sum total of everything that exists. It is the state of things as they are actually, as they actually are. But now the difference comes when you realize that your reality, your personal lived experience, day to day experience of the world. It's not that, it's not reality. Another definition that I also got is that your reality is what your brain perceives and interprets at the moment it perceives it. It is stimulus filtered through memory, emotion, culture, expectation, and experience. Just let that sink in. I'm not sure if this list is exhaustive, but just try to look at it that when you're talking about reality as an interpretation of stimuli, what the stimuli that the brain has perceived, it could be through your eyes and through the five senses as we know it. And this stimulus is filtered through your memory. It could be your memory of how you experienced a certain event. Maybe you saw a cat as a tiger, and anytime you see a cat, you get scared. You feel that that's a bad example, but you get what I mean. So we filter our reality through memory, what happened to us. And then there is emotion. What kind of emotion does this reality evoke in you? And then there's culture. What culture did you go through growing up, and how does it dictate the things that you do? And then there's expectation. Remember, uncommunicated expectations breed resentment. This is most especially true to people that are in relationships. If you don't communicate your expectation and you expect the person that you are with to try and read your thoughts, then through that lens of expectation, you're going to experience reality differently because they will disappoint you. You get? So, expectations of what we expect from our friends, what we expect from our colleagues, family, and even our bosses. And if they don't live up to that expectation, will make us to experience that reality somewhat differently than what we had envisioned. And then lastly is through experience. So once you assemble all these things, then it feels like another word that most people associate with reality is truth. That what is real is true. But then who defines what is real? Considering that we all experience reality differently. So based on this, I thought reality to be experienced in three layers. Again, this is not really conclusive, but for the sake of this episode, let's just go through the three layers that I think to define the reality as we experience it or as it is. The first one, I think, is absolute reality. And when you're talking about absolute reality, this is what actually exists. And what I'd say is that the only person that knows absolute reality is an absolute. And no one on this earth is an absolute. If we get the definition of what an absolute is, or absolute in the word, it means something that exists independently and not in relation to other things. It's not relative, it's not comparative. The only absolute that is on this earth is God. And to get the absolute reality and to get the absolute truth, the question, the existential crisis of why are you here? Why are you on this earth? Why do you go through the experiences that you go through? Is pain necessary? What causes pain? What causes people to behave the way that they do? These questions can be answered by absolute reality, by an absolute being. And I don't think there is ever going to be an end to the religious debates of which religion is right, which one is wrong, because all these religions try to answer this existential crisis. There are questions: where did you come from? Why are you here? Where do you go after you get out of here? That is after you die, basically. And since no one knows what happens after death, we all believe. Belief is different from reality, actually, because now from that belief you get to embody it and it becomes your lived reality. The only thing that I've ever known of what makes religion to be true is the experience of that religion. For instance, you see in the Bible when Thomas doubted and he got to experience the manifestation of that reality through the embodiment of the resurrected Christ coming to him and telling him, I'm alive. As you can see, here are the holes where they dungad me with nails. You can even, yeah, you can touch and see. So he got to experience that reality, like physically. And most people will even tell you when it comes to the experience of God and Christ, it has to be personal to the extent that this personal experience becomes hard for you to even explain because there is no words that you can put to really explain what you experienced. I don't want to dig much into that, but I hope you're getting what I'm saying. Also, the other aspect of what makes religion to be real, and what I'll say it's Christianity basically, is the manifestation of works. When it says that signs and wonders shall follow them, if you see people getting healed, miracles and whatnot, to some degree, this one now helps to solidify the reality, the realness of that religion. And lastly, which is the most important, is the founder of that religion. How did they live their life, and did they live what they preached? You get. So, but it's really hard to discern the absolute reality as long as we are still on this earth. Now, the second layer will be lived reality. Now, this lived reality is how human beings collectively inhabit, or rather, yeah, how human beings, it's the reality under earth, the lived reality. But now, this lived reality is very different based on class. Like the reality of a person in the high rise and a person living in slums, they are way different. You can't tell me that these two people are experiencing life the same way, the same life, the same timeline. They are not experiencing it in the same way. This one is shaped by culture, it's shaped by, okay, as much as it's also different there, because there is also that interaction whereby the rich get to interact with the poor. There is something that there are confines that makes us to have coherence in how we interact with this with each other. This could be language, it could be culture, it's also social agreement. This is the lived reality, but the lived reality between classes is very different. And by the way, the reason as why we want to build capacity is to bridge that gap, ensuring that those in the from poor backgrounds get at least to have basic amenities for survival. They get to have clean drinking water, they get to have food on their table. That's why we want to build our capacity, building your own personal capacity in order to lend a hand. You lift as you rise. I will keep on telling you this time and time again: lift as you rise. Make sure that no other person gets pricked by the thorn that pricked you, and no flame that burned you should burn someone else. Build bridges, not walls. Lastly, the last layer would be your reality. Now, how you get you as an individual, how do you experience life as it is? So this one is very personal and it's very subjective. It could be different version of events. Two people could see the same event, but they experience it very differently. And this one, as we talked about from the start, it's based on everything you've ever experienced. All that bias that has shaped your mind up to this point is how now you experience your reality. And most of us lived in that third layer of your reality. And we assume that you're experiencing absolute reality, or we're experiencing lived reality. And we want to assume that my reality is your reality. No, it's not. And that's why you should learn to elevate your perspective, to see people from their point of view. As much as maybe they might not see it from your point of view, but you make the first step to see it from their point of view, because here you will understand a whole lot and you will get a large playing field, because you now know what you think, you know what the other person thinks, and you know where they're coming from. So when you see this gap between your reality and actual reality, this is where most of the problems originate. And as I've said it and I say it again, we don't see reality as it is, we see it as we are. If we sit down to think about it deeply, that statement, we could sit in the same meeting, we could watch the same presentation, and then we leave with fundamentally different experience, different impressions. And this is because we were brought up with a different set of experiences. We were brought up with different expectations and different assumptions. So everything we experienced in that setting, it was our own construction. And when I say our own construction, it's the construction of the mind. So it's never a new idea. That idea of experiencing reality as we are is not a new idea. You know, when I talked about ancient philosopher, there's an allegory of the cave by Plato. It's a thought experiment whereby Plato imagined prisoners that were chained in a cave. They have never been exposed to reality as we know it, so they were watching shadows on a wall because there was light from the mouth of the cave, and so they mistake those shadows for reality. Like that's what they were used to. Penye umewekwa, you just see the wall and the shadows that are emanating from the light that is cast from behind. So that's what they see. They had never seen the world outside. Those shadows were everything they ever knew. So when one prisoner was finally freed and he walked into the sunlight, the light was so blinding. The eyes of these prisoners were strained for darkness, as you can see. And then another story that tried to expound on this is blind men that were told to describe an elephant. I don't know if you've heard this story. So each man, were they four or five? I don't remember the number, but each man touches a different part of the animal. So the first one anashika the trunk, the second one anashika the tusk, the third one anashika the leg, the last one anashika the tail. Now, all of them have a different description of what this elephant is, what this animal is. So the one mwenye alishika the leg is like, no, it's like a pillar, a column or a tree stump. The other one that held the tail is like, no, it's a rope. And the point of this being that, okay, none of this person was lying, but they were wrong because they had a piece of the truth. They did not have the whole truth. They had a piece of it and then they mistook it for the whole truth. And this is the mistake that most of us make. You might have a piece of something, a piece of a story. Mostly it's always a story. And then through that story, you shape a whole narrative. Because, do you know, by the way, your mind is built to fill in the blanks. If you read, there is this thought process that you can do. When you don't have to read, when you read sentences, when you read words, you don't read the whole letter by letter. You only need most of the time the first and the second letter. And if it's in context, you can just know what it meant, even if the in between letters are distorted, because your mind is trained to fill in the blanks. It's the same thing that happens to news when you read news. This one was from the Diary of a CEO podcast, whereby this CIA agent, or yeah, I think it was a CIA agent, he was talking about how the news tries to to create blanks, and then you feel it. You get to associate those blanks with your preconceived notions. You get? So beware of this. Don't run with a piece of the truth thinking that it's the whole truth. It doesn't explain everything. So be careful on this. And here comes what I call the danger of anchored perception. When you hear something about someone, maybe you have never met this person. This becomes dangerous because now if you were to meet this person, you now get to experience this person based on the lens of the person that was telling you about them. If, say, somebody tells you that I am a bad person, this is what I did to them, maybe true, maybe I did that thing to them, but it was perhaps a mistake and it was something that you resolved, and this person was just recounting it, retelling you the story, maybe because you are not there. And since we have never met, you are biased to see me from the lens upon which this person told you about me. That is not the danger of anchored perception, that you really need to get to experience things. Yeah, of course, this happens. Remember, when I talk about the brain filling blanks, this happens for our safety. If you are living in the savannah, you are living in the jungle, you are a hunter gatherer, you don't have time to see the whole thing. If you've seen the grass shaking, then the brain interprets there must be a lie there. It has filled the blank. You haven't seen the whole truth. But now this works against us in the modern world, whereby all the dangers of living in the savannah, the historians tell us that that's where we came from, right? From hunter gatherers to inventing fire and all. S- So your brain, we still have the same brain, but in a modern world. So when that brain fills those blanks, you have a perception of who I am before you even met me. You tend to judge me before you know me. So read the book before you judge it. As they say, don't judge a book by its cover. Though it's, I don't look at how complex and the paradox of the existence that we live in, that sometimes it is better for you to judge a book by its cover because it ensures your safety. If you see a rugged man walking towards you in the middle of the night and you're on the street alone, especially if you're a lady, you don't think twice about the intention. You always assume that they mean harm and you protect yourself. So there's the paradox is that there are times where we adopt either strategy. You get. Then there's another thing that we tend to judge now people based on this, what you're talking about. We tend to judge people by their actions, and then we judge ourselves by our intentions. One reason for that is that because we can't really tell the intentions of people, but we can only see their actions, but we can see our intentions. So when we judge ourselves, we are a bit fair. For example, you somebody cuts you off in traffic. This happens mostly huko majuu. Most of them have this road rage and all. So if somebody cuts you off in traffic and you're like, instead of wondering what's happening in their life right now, the reason for that rush, you're like, that person's a terrible driver. You see, you judge the action. But when someone cuts you, but when you cut someone off because perhaps you are late, you see now here is context and here is intention. You didn't, maybe you didn't see them, maybe you had a brutal morning, you know the full context. So for you, it was an exception. You judge your intention, but for them, you judge their action. This is a bias in itself on how we experience reality. And it's one of the features of human perception. So elevate your perspective. Now, when we are still talking about anchored perception, when it becomes dangerous is when you become too attached to the version of your reality. How you view reality, and then you attach to that version. You don't want to learn. You think you are the one that knows everything there is to know. Then you stop growing. You stop considering that the person in front of you knows something that you don't, something that Jordan Peterson always say. Assume the person you're speaking to knows something that you don't. So if you don't consider all this, then you stop growing. You start defending a story. We've talked about confirmation bias, though not in depth. I believe all this content is out there. You can research on it. It's a bias of the mind, whereby you tend to seek out things that confirms what you already believe. Anything that challenges it, you are like, no, this mostly happens with religious cults. People are so immersed, they believe that what they're following is true, to the extent that if somebody tells them otherwise, they're like, nope, you're wrong, you're wrong. Um, hmm, what else? How do I want to end this episode? Perhaps what shapes our perception, as I had said earlier, if we were to sum up everything in this episode, it would be experience. That everything you have lived up to this point in time has been deposited in your nervous system, what we call gut. I just have the gut that this person is a good person. I have the gut. Today I'm going to get money. Or perhaps not. The way your parents spoke to you as a child, the times you trusted and somebody betrayed you, anytime you took a risk and it paid off, and the times you stayed quiet and paid a price for it, this shapes your experience, it shapes your perception. So if we look at it in context, How then do you get to decide what is real, what is counterfeit? I'd say perhaps maybe this could be in the next episode since I'm way over time. But one aspect would be asking yourself this question: am I looking at this the wrong way? And by the way, it really helps as a leader. I've tried this once or twice, and I'll tell you that people really appreciate it because it helps to bring about clarity. If you're giving directions, or rather, you're trying to discuss about an event that you're planning, or you're talking about ideas, activities that need to be done in the team that you're leading, it's important to always ask this question: am I missing something? Is there something that I'm missing? Or am I looking at this in the wrong way? Because by doing so, you place the ball in the court of your teammate, your team member. Like they even have to critique what they have told you or what they're talking about, because you tend to assume that you've understood what it is that they want, or you've really gotten the whole picture when in fact you might have not. So when you ask this question regularly, am I looking at this the wrong way? Have I gotten everything you're saying? Is there something else? Am I missing something? Then they feel free, because sometimes people get, based on our leadership, based on our personalities rather, and our temperaments, people react to us differently. So assuming you're an authoritarian, or maybe you're just stern, you are strict and firm, people in a way might approach you differently. They might see you in a different light than the one that you see yourself. So when you give them this question, am I looking at this the wrong way? Is there something that I'm missing? They will, it's like a free pass, or it's a permission for them to speak freely. And when they do that, then you get honest feedback. Yeah, so that's the first question. Always consider that the person in front of you knows something that you don't, about the situation, about themselves, even about you. The second thing is to understand that the ultimate gift of knowledge is humility. When you are knowledgeable enough, when you're privileged enough to understand the existence that we live in, to understand the world as it is, be humble. You know the Dunning-Kruger effect, whereby the confidence, how confidence and what you know, knowledge, relate. That the little if you know little about something, you tend to be overconfident. By the way, this is one of the reasons as to why we have politicians that don't know anything about the policies that they are making. I'm not trying to say that they're really silly, because some of them do it obviously because it benefits them. But then there are those that are okay. We have had this quarrel time and time again, that why is it that those people, the leaders of integrity, leaders that can lead based on merit, don't uh, don't get to the elm of leadership? They don't get those positions. It's because people that don't know, or maybe they know little, tend to be more confident. So they tend to shout more, they tend to speak louder, they tend to ask for raise, they tend to go out of their way to work for these positions and whatnot. But the more you know, then you get to the valley of despair, where you are like, you are just on the tip of the iceberg, and there is a lot more to learn. There is this philosopher that said, the only thing I know is that I know nothing. So you see, people that tend to know a lot more, they tend to self-critique and whatnot. But now, the ultimate gift of knowledge is what I'm saying, is that it's humility. Be humble and use what you know to improve your life and the life of others. The third thing is learn to sit in the discomfort. Sit in the discomfort of not knowing, sit in the discomfort of not understanding what this life is all about, but understand patterns, understand behaviors. Pattern, we are here at this point in time as a species that we have not gone extinct because of pattern recognition. We were able to understand patterns. When you see as something slithering in the grass, that's a snake. When you see grass shake in the savannah, that's a lion. You run for your life, like your life depends on it, because it does. So understanding patterns. If somebody treats you badly today, that's a pattern. No, that's not a pattern. A pattern is when they treat you badly again the same time. Yes, you might cut people some slack. You might like, okay, benefit of a doubt. But if somebody wrongs you in a certain way that is inhumane, you have all the right to put them at arm's length. Don't keep this person in your life when they're mistreating you. Yes, I understand that captor is called captor, and captor victim relationship is very complex, the Stockholm syndrome and whatnot. But then again, you have to learn to extract boundaries, that this is a line, don't cross. And the minute someone crosses it, do not tolerate. That's the mistake that we make. People treat you based on how much you tolerate. If somebody points a finger at you today and you let it pass, tomorrow they push you, you let it pass. The third time they will slap you, you let it pass. The next time they will kill you. So learn to extract boundaries, and the minute somebody infringes upon that boundary, walk away or retaliate. Don't just stay still and keep quiet. Say something. Make sure that your boundaries are respected. So if you are to take one thing from this episode, would be how you experience life is very different, but it's upon you to choose how you get to experience it, by going through those three things I've talked about, understanding that there are things that you really don't know and others know it better than you do, and entertaining the thought that you could be wrong. And so when you do that, try to experience life from a point of joy and happiness, humility in itself, and the experiences that you go through, try to enjoy them. Remember the episode we talked about amor fati, love of fate, that enjoy the cards that you're dealt. Enjoy the cards that you're dealt. You might have a bad hand. Your life might have dealt with you very badly. Somebody said that life doesn't have a plan for you. You make a plan and then you wrestle with life to make it happen. And so as you do so, in the constant state of becoming, don't let what you are aspiring to become to be the, yes, as much as it is the goal, don't make it to be the only thing that gives you joy, gives you happiness, that if you don't achieve it, or rather if you don't move a step towards it, that it becomes weight heavy on you. What you do is that you get to enjoy that experience of becoming by choosing how you see life, how you see reality, how you interact with people. And lastly, be calm, be slow to anger, slow to judge, and slow in your speaking, slow in your response. Don't react, respond. And when you do that, you will see the in between, you will see the fine print, you will see the what was not said, just by being calm, by being observant, by being least reactive, by trying to see reality as it is, not as we are. It's a tall order, but it comes from constant re-evaluation and constant critique of the things that you do, the things that you say, the thoughts that you have, and the dreams, ambitions that you've set for yourself. Right. I think that's it for today. I'm looking forward to expounding more on this theme. Remember, our theme for the year is elevating your perspective, and always strive to be better, to think better, to do better, and to be better. So until we meet again in the next episode, shalom.